Hello there, my name is Andy Pipkin, aka Matt Lucas, and you are listening to the Bottle O Podcast.
The Bottle O Podcast, Season 2, Episode 1, presented by Luke, with special guest, Matt Lucas. Your opinion, what's the best doctor?
Who is the best doctor, in my opinion, is
Cool.
a really... Sorry?
Of course, you got the struggle now, because you work with Baker and Capaldi.
Who is the best doctor, in my opinion, is a struggle, as you rightly point out, because I have worked with Peter Capaldi, I've worked with PCAP, I've worked with Tom Back, Mr. Baker. I've also worked with Colin Baker twice, once on a Little Britain sketch that ended up being a deleted scene, and once on a Big Finish audio drama about 15, 16 years ago. Have I worked with him? I've met Peter Davison at two parties. Mark Gatiss' 40th birthday and Mark Gatiss' 50th birthday. And they both went by in a flash, I've got to tell you. I don't know where those 10 years went. I've once met Sylvester McCoy in a pub. Or maybe I've met him twice. Let's see if I've met any others. Well, David Tennant, I know. He's a pal. We've been to a Proclaimers concert together. I was on the Graham Norton show with Matt Smith.
You've got quite the lineup of them then.
Yeah. Now I have to pick a favourite. Who's your preference?
Chris Eccleston.
That's interesting because nobody says Chris Eccleston.
He was my first. My dad introduced me to him when I was like 3, so it's...
I've met him in the street.
I've met
him in the street. Did that count?
The last guest I had said the same thing. Sophie Aldred said the same thing as well, so it's...
Yeah, I've met him in the street. So, I like that you like Christopher Eccleston, because obviously he's a little estranged from the family. You know, there's always a member of the family who doesn't visit very often.
Yeah.
I think he'll come back to us.
Yes. If you could make any changes to the TARDIS, what would they be?
Well, I think the chairs would be a bit more comfy. I think there's 3 chairs on the main.
They're not really in the most convenient spaces either.
Not really, no. They're on the main concourse. They're very functional. I'd probably have more windows, let in a bit more daylight. I know that's not really much of a possibility in the TARDIS. We only have the windows at the front, really. Well, we do have windows the way round, but well, you know what I mean. What else would I do? I'd put in like a Mr. Softy ice cream machine, and I'd put in one of those. Do you know those arcade machines? I think they call them coin dozers. They're you know that show Tipping Point?
Yeah.
And it goes on the next level and the next level and the next level. I'd put one of those in, and I'd have an on-site masseuse as well in there. And I think the TARDIS has pretty much got everything else.
Can you explain how the Doctor saved Nardole?
How or why?
Bit of both, really.
Well, I'm not going to tell you, but you will find out in Extremis, or in episode 7, you'll begin to discover how and why that happened. So I'll leave it to Mr. Moffat and co. to do that, because I'm terrified of spoilers, even though it's only 25 hours before the episode airs.
Yeah.
I daren't go into detail, but you do find a little bit more about how the Doctor and Nardole have reconnected.
Yeah, describe your ideal Doctor Who Little Britain crossover.
Ooh.
Supposedly, if you had like a comic relief sketch you could do, or...
That's a challenge, isn't it?
Doctor Who goes 15 rating.
Yeah, who in the world of Little Britain would do well in the world of Doctor Who? Let's have a think about these characters. Well, I think I don't think Bubbles would make a good companion because I think she's just too busy.
I can imagine the Doctor meeting Anthony Head as the Prime Minister.
Well, of course, I agree with you there.
But he was already in Doctor Who, wasn't he?
He's been in Doctor Who. David Walliams has been in Doctor Who. I've been in Doctor Who.
I've been going through quite a bit of the old Buffys at the moment, so I'm seeing a lot of Anthony Heads.
I think Vicky Pollard and her... Because her children will have grown up by now. Vicky Pollard's had 6 kids by 7 different men. And they'll all be around the same kind of age that Vicky Pollard was when we first met her. By now, so I think the Doctor would need to go and destroy them because I think that family would, at this point, would be kind of terrorising local villages. So I think that's probably, it would be kind of, can the Doctor save the world from the Pollard clan?
If you could be in a biography film about anyone and play them, who would you choose?
Well, I know that they're going to make a film about Queen, but I don't look anything like Freddie Mercury, sadly. Years ago...
Did you even do Queen in Rock Profile?
We never did Queen in Rock Profile because our pledge in Rock Profile was only to play people who were alive. And Freddie had already passed away, and so it didn't feel right to do him. I think years ago I played a person called Lee Bowery, who was an Australian who came to Britain and was known for loads of different things. He was a fashion designer. He was would wear the most extraordinary makeup. He was a huge influence on Lady Gaga, the way she dresses, her whole kind of outlook. He was also, he had a punk band, he was an actor, he was a model, he was a dancer, he was a million different things. He lived a fascinating life, and he died of AIDS in his mid-30s, very sadly, in that period of time when so many brilliant people were lost to that awful disease. And so, after I played him on stage, I did try for years to see if we could get a biography made of him, starring me. But we never quite got it off the ground. But I met some very interesting directors. And it's a fascinating life, and maybe one day someone will come along and tell the story. Probably be a younger, sexier actor than me to play the role, but it would have been Lee Bowery, definitely. I would like to play Imelda Marcos, I would say, and if you can go up and look up who Imelda Marcos is.
And vice versa, if anyone could play you in a film about your life, who would you want it to be?
That's a good question as well. Elton John. I would like Elton John to play me because he's outrageous, and also wears a wig, so he could just whip the wig off and be me.
This is a question which I've asked, I think, almost every guest I've had on, and it's if you can invite any celebrity or fictional character, you don't have to know them or anything, to your house to have tea with, who would it be?
Well, I do like dogs, and in fact my dogs are going to come back shortly, and they'll probably make a hell of a noise when they do. I do like dogs, so maybe Lassie. I don't know if you know who Lassie is.
I do just about, I think.
Or the dog in Men in Black. I think probably a famous dog. Yeah. Or the little monkey that played Marcel in Friends. That would be rather nice to have him round.
Oh yeah, on the sitcom thing, I almost completely forgot until this morning. I was watching loads of episodes of Community, and I noticed you had an appearance in series 4.
I was in an episode of Community, yes.
In a very Doctor Who-esque episode, really.
It is an Inspector Spacetime convention.
Were you a viewer of Community before?
I'd heard of the programme and I hadn't seen it, but when I was asked to be in it, I sort of cribbed up and watched a ton of episodes and thought it was brilliant, and it was great. And I've since did a film with Joel McHale, which is coming out later this year, and I was very proud to be in Community. And now, of course, I've appeared in, well, so far 14 episodes of the real Inspector Spacetime.
You're currently playing Nardole in Doctor Who, but this isn't the first time you've played a main character in a family TV series, as you acted and wrote the BBC Two series Pompidou. What was it like working for a different age range?
Well, I have been in things before aimed at a family audience. I was in Wind in the Willows for the BBC as Mr. Toad. I had a small appearance in Paddington in a scene with Peter Capaldi, although our characters didn't have any interaction. And Alice in Wonderland I was in with Disney. Although Doctor Who audience is probably a little bit older, it was fine. It felt natural. I think I don't ever think that Doctor Who is a show that talks down to its audience. You know, there are plenty of adults who understand very little when they watch it, and there are plenty of kids who understand all of it when they watch it.
I had to spend ages explaining the series 9 finale to my parents.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, and it always took me a few reads of the script to get a sense of how I was going to play it. Not necessarily what it meant, because I didn't always know what it meant, but certainly how I could play it. Yeah, but I didn't treat, you know, from a performance point of view, I don't treat it any differently if it's an adult's project or a kid's project. It doesn't make any difference to me. I mean, I think you just do the best you can.
Later in the series of Doctor Who, you supposedly star in an episode written by Mark Gatiss, who you also worked on Little Britain with. What was it like working back with him?
It was lovely, and actually I was with Mark this morning. It's always a pleasure to work with him, because he's a very kind man, but he's also just an incredibly learned man. He's just so intelligent and so in touch with everything. He's so in touch with the past, but also with the present. He's not stuck anywhere, and yeah, it's just great. He's just funny, and he's nice, and he's naughty as well. You know, there's always a glint in his eye, and he's having fun. He has fun with what he does. You know, he's delighted to be working on Sherlock, delighted to be working on Doctor Who. I say working on Sherlock slightly downplays his role, really, because obviously he's the co-creator. But I'm so pleased that he's able to do the projects that obviously are passions of his, because he's so brilliant at it.
When did you decide that you wanted to be a comedian?
Well, what happened was, I didn't want to be a comedian. I wanted to be an actor, and I was in school plays, and I was even in the National Youth Music Theatre, the National Youth Theatre, and I was in a West End play when I was 14. But I did think, because I'd lost my hair when I was 6, that it would be difficult for me to get work as an actor, because it's hard enough to get work as an actor anyway. But I thought, because I don't have hair and I don't have eyebrows, in the theatre it's a bit different. You know, if I'm in a youth theatre production, you know, they can just cast me as the old man, and that's fine. But I thought, once I'm sort of 18 or 19 and trying to get professional acting roles, it's going to be hard for me, because I don't look. I'm young, but I don't look normal. I look strange. So the idea of being a stand-up comedian was to give myself something to perform, and I was much more interested in the performing than the writing. But I became a better writer over the years, and now I'm much more interested in the writing than the performing. But it was a means to an end. I mean, Ben Elton, the comedian, actually came
He did Blackadder, didn't he?
That's right. He
Yeah.
did Blackadder, and he says that he wanted to be a writer, but didn't think anybody would perform his stuff. So that's why he became a stand-up, just so that his writing could be heard. I was the other way round.
How did you meet David Williams?
I met David Williams in the National Youth Theatre when I was 16 and he was 19 in the summer holidays in 1990. And then the next year, we were both in the same production of The Tempest, which he was in, and I was actually a stagehand, bringing props on and off. But we bonded because we both loved the work of Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer, who are these fantastic comedians that we were big fans of.
When did Stephen Moffat approach you about playing Nardole?
Well, what happened was, actually, I was asked to audition, or put myself on tape, as they say these days, to record myself auditioning for Russell T Davies's TV production of A Midsummer Night's Dream that he recently did for the BBC. And I did this, and I didn't get the role. And Andy Pryor, who was the same casting director who casts both this and Doctor Who.
I've seen his name on a lot of things. I was watching the A Word as well.
Yeah. He's a big deal.
Up.
And he asked me, would I be in the Doctor Who Christmas special instead? And it was just a small role, Nardole. There wasn't really much there. But I just thought, yeah, it'd be nice to do it. It'll make me feel better about not getting Midsummer Night's Dream. You know, at least I didn't get that job, but I got this job. Was the way I looked at it. And then two things happened. One thing that happened was that while I was filming the Husbands of River Song, it turned out that the person who had been cast as Bottom in Midsummer Night's Dream was unable to play the role now. They were not available. And so they asked me to step in with just 3 weeks' notice. And I'm sure one of the reasons they asked me to step in was because I was already in Cardiff filming The Husbands of River Song, working with Brian Minchin and with Nikki Wilson on the Shakespeare film, which had piggybacked onto the production of Doctor Who. It was using the same sound stages, to film on, the same studio space, the same costume and makeup people, or the same costume people, certainly, and the same camera crew and the same riggers and all the same production staff from Doctor Who. And so I sort of got to know everybody a bit more. I'd done the Christmas special, then I got to know them on A Midsummer Night's Dream. And I just thought, this is a really nice bunch of people. I'd like to come back and work with them again. And also, obviously, I thought there was more to do with Nardole. There was more, there was the chance to take what I'd done, but make it a bit more textured and give it a bit more depth, and calm it down a little bit. And and I love Doctor Who. But as much as I love the show Doctor Who, I love the experience of working on it, because the crew were just great. They were just a really nice bunch of people, and that was as much a reason I wanted to come back as any other.
Okay, I've got a few questions from listeners. Grace asks, as a child, before you lost your hair, what colour was it?
It was blonde, and then when I was 4, and then it turned brown when I was 5, and then it fell out when I was 6.
Will asks, will Little Britain return?
There are no plans to bring back Little Britain at the moment. I'm not saying it never will or never could, but there's no plans.
Alfie Brennan asks, can you give us a hint as to what's in the vault?
I'm not allowed to say what's in the vault, but I think you might find out tomorrow. I think you might. I'm trying to remember when you do, and I think it might be tomorrow. If it's not tomorrow, it'll be the next week or the week after. But you're going to find out soon.
It's not a finale thing. It's a.
Sorry, you don't have to wait till the finale. No.
What's it like working with such actors as Peter Capaldi and Pearl Mackie?
Well, I mean, they're both very nice, and they're both really best themselves in the script, which I think is great, because neither of them are lazy. They're both, they're both very professional, and they know their lines, and they're always there on time, and they're always really focused, and they all care about it. All of us care about it. We all wanted to make it the best it could be. And so it was just a pleasure, really. And in fact, Pearl came and stayed at my house last week in America. I mean, we've become good friends.
That was why she was in Crispy Pro's video, then?
Yes, that is why she was in Crispy Pro's video, yes. Because she was staying at my house at the time, that's right, yes. Yes. She's not here with me now, I'm afraid.
Bethany Thompson asks, are you still friends with David Williams?
I will always be friends with David Williams.
Be very awkward, no.
Yeah, I couldn't say no, could I?
Phoenix Smith of the Five Who fans asked, when will Big Finish hurry up and release the Nardole box set?
Well, this is the question the world is asking. I don't answer. They haven't approached me. I have been in Big Finish audio drama before, in 2001, I think, playing both Jelloid and Cylinder Man in, I can't remember what it was called, but it was with Colin Baker and Christopher Biggins and someone else. I can't remember who.
Christopher Johnson of the Big Damn Cast asked, was it your decision for Nardole's personality to change rapidly between Husbands of River Song and this series?
I think when we were doing the Husbands of River Song, Doug McKinnon, the director, was very keen for me to play it the way I played it, which was big and broad and daft and silly, because it's a brief appearance and it's written purely comedically, and it's a Christmas special. When the character came back, he came back for episode 1 of the current series, and then they decided to put him in episode 2 and 3, and I was just going to come back for the end as well. But then, and they later on added me to episode 4, so I've ended up filming bits out of order. But I was not going to be in The Return of Dr. Mysterio, and it was while we were filming, I think, episodes 3 and 4, that Stephen Moffat decided to put me in The Return of Dr. Mysterio. And the way the series worked this year is that we recorded the first 4 episodes, then spent a month doing Dr. Mysterio, and then started again with episode 5. And so by the time I came to shoot The Return of Dr. Mysterio, I'd already shot scenes for episodes 1 and 2, and maybe 3, but yeah, the first scene at the beginning of episode 3. And I wasn't going to be in episode 4 at all at that point. We shot that scene only about a month ago for episode 4. But and so I'd already come back and played Nardole for a few months by that stage, and we already had a sense of things being a bit calmer, a bit less frenetic, a bit less pantomime by then anyway. Because so I was approaching it really again from episode 1, the pilot, which it wasn't called the pilot then. It was called
A Star in Her Eye? Yeah.
A Star in Her Eye, yeah. And I was approaching it differently from A Star in Her Eye, really, just because I thought, well, if you're going to see this character again, he can't be as crazed, because it's not a Christmas special. The Christmas specials are a bit wilder, aren't they?
Yeah,
they're a bit more. They're for a younger audience. They're for a bigger audience in a way. They're for the whole family sat around on Christmas Day, and you've got to keep them awake because everyone's falling asleep after the turkey. Whereas an average episode of Doctor Who is a little more focused. But that's nothing against Douglas McKinnon, who is one of the best directors I've ever worked with, I think.
I can say me and my sister found it very entertaining noticing you in the background shots just fiddling with the toy elephant throughout
I
Return of
put that
Dr.
in.
Mysterio.
I would put little bits here and there. I put in odd lines here and there. Some of my best friends are bluish. Little lines I stick in cuddle. Joining in the cuddle was just something I decided to do.
Christopher Johnson from Big Damn Cast also asked, if he pays you £100, will you come to his next birthday party as George Dawes?
He can pay me £100 if he wants, but I'm probably not coming as George Dawes. Because I feel so. I get quite self-conscious putting that romper suit on. But it's lovely to be invited. How old is he going to be at his next birthday? He has to be a certain age to know who George Dawes was. I
had to Google it, to be honest.
You what, sorry?
I had to Google it, to be honest.
You had to Google it, exactly. I think the thing is that when I used to film this show, Shooting Stars, I would be walking around the BBC dressed as a baby. And people, you know, when I was walking down the corridors, people would just kind of make jokes at my expense. And so I don't think I could deal with going to a party dressed as George Dawes. Also, I'd have to take the whole romper suit off to go to the toilet. And it's just too much of a kerfuffle. So no, thank you, but no.
And then Matthew Watson of the same podcast says, will there be another series of Shooting Stars with George Dawes?
No, I don't think they'll do Shooting Stars again. But I am filming this weekend with Vic and Bob for the first time in many, many years for something new. So I'm very excited to be working with them again. But who knows? You know, we did Shooting Stars and then we stopped, and to our surprise it came back. And then we stopped, and to our surprise it came back again. So who knows? One day it might even come back again. Who knows? But there's no plans. Nigel
Wyke just wants me to tell you that you play a great part in Doctor Who.
Oh, that's very sweet of him. Thank you, Nigel White. Your parents brought you up very well.
Zach Casey says, if you were to play any villain, what would you play?
Well, a Doctor Who villain, or just a villain in general?
I think it's just a villain in general.
Theresa May.
Be quite an interesting... Be quite a... If you were to do another Little Britain sketch, it'd be another one of that sort of satirical humour thing, wouldn't it, really?
Yeah. Well, it was. I mean, people talk about the shocking stuff in Little Britain, but there was a bit of satire in there somewhere. I've probably got time for one more question.
Yes, I have one more question, so that works quite well. Tom Monty asks, what's your favourite series of Modern Who, and in that, what's your favourite episode?
Well, when I was... In the current episodes...
Yeah,
in the current series, my favourite so far is Extremis. Because it feels like classic Doctor Who to me. But it does have there is something quite clever and contemporary in what those suits stand for, I think. Going back through time and space, there is my memories of the oh, my dogs have just come back. Hello, I'm just doing a podcast, Magnus. I'm just doing a podcast at the moment. Okay. I won't be a moment. My favourite memory... Magnus has come in with the dogs. Magnus is the man who walks the dogs. Thank you. So, my favourite episode, probably in the new season, Extremis, I would say. And traditionally, going back in old Doctor Who. Do you say old Doctor Who? Original Who?
I think he says Modern Who, so supposedly Eccleston onwards.
Right, well, I don't know which number series it was, but basically, as a child, when Tom Baker regenerated into Peter Davison, that was a very exciting moment for me. Very exciting. Because it's the first regeneration I ever saw. And people were talking about it for days before it happened. And it was... The special effects back then were very good. We look at it now and it doesn't look so good, but back then... It was state-of-the-art.
I do think it is one of the best regenerations. I think it's definitely up there with the TV movie one, which is quite...
Yeah, it's a great regeneration. I do love Matt Smith into Peter Capaldi, actually, as well. And I've watched that episode countless times.
Okay, so thank you for listening to this episode of the Bottle-O podcast with Matt Lucas. If you liked it, then please be sure to follow me on Twitter @llama_bottle0 and look out for other episodes on YouTube and SoundCloud. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, and goodbye indeed.